So thank you. I'm delighted to welcome you tonight in this fantastic place and under the sun. I'm Bertrand Billon. I'm one of the partners of Chappuis Halder. I'm in charge of the risk and finance practice. And so for those of you who don't know Chappuis Halder, we are a management consulting firm dedicated to financial services. So tonight we are talking of XVAs, and the title of our conference, which is a joint conference with Quantifi, is about XVA pricing challenges ahead. So if I look behind, we've decided to launch this conference with Quantifi when we realized that there was lots of events in London on this topic, but not much in Paris. And secondly, that we realized that lots of conferences were more on the theoretical part of XVAs, and we were trying to give it a more business or organizational angle. So we'll see that in the agenda later on. And first, so let me introduce you Rohan Dulasi, which is the CEO of Quantifi, and that will introduce our topic tonight. So, Rohan.
Thanks. Welcome. Welcome. It's a very interesting subject, and I think from my perspective, one of the things I could provide that may be interesting is a bit of an international perspective on it, what I see going on around the world, and what I see is really a subject that's been evolving over a period of time. So CVA has been around for quite a while. Some of the new XVAs are more recent, but what I'm seeing now is after a lot of discussion, a lot of debate, people really starting to look at practically what they need to do, and also not looking at it from a perspective of I need a number, but also from the perspective of I need a useful number and a number that's accurate, and how am I going to use this in the business, how am I going to apply this to all the aspects of the business that I need it for. So a very topical subject, very, very happy to be here at this event and have the time, so good work. Thank you.
So so we have a wonderful panel of experts tonight from the industry, so the best in class in Paris, I would say. So, and thank you for joining tonight and contributing to the success of this conference. In terms of agenda, so we will have 3 sessions. We'll start with a regulatory perspective with Elsa Allen from ACPR, who will give us some look back on CVM and whether the regulator or the marketplace has achieved the goals initially planned with CVAs, and what are the next steps on this matter. We will then move more on the business side on the second session to look at it from a client perspective or the way XVAs impact pricing and the client relationship. And third, we will finish with more an organization perspective and assess how banks get organized to manage this risk and the underlying resources efficiently. So that's it for our introduction. So once again, thanks for joining us tonight, and I'll leave the floor to Elsa and Augusta as facilitator for our first session. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So, OTC derivative trading has come into the spotlight post-2008 crisis, showing the difficulties and intricacies of pricing and valuing transactions accurately between risky counterparties. Regulators and regulatory committees have emphasized the need to make markets more efficient, more prudent, pushing financial markets to adapt to new rules and practices. After nearly a decade, it's probably time for the industry and the regulator to take a critical look at what has been achieved, what's left to be accomplished, and whether the new financial world is robust, more prudent, or whether we need to need to go further. Let me introduce you to Elsa Allemand, international banking specialist for the French regulator ACPR. Elsa has a great experience on the topic. Elsa is a member of a subgroup on market risk at the EBA, and Elsa will come back on the conclusions from the EBA on CVA.
Good evening. So I'm basically going to present some of the main results we got from the EBA report that was published on the 25th of February. And I'm also going to discuss briefly what we can expect from the future of both the international level at the Basel level and also at the EU level with the EBA. So first of all, just to have a quick recap. So why have we done this report? So the idea was that we introduced the CVA charge at the Basel level after the crisis due to all the financial losses that were observed, as you know. And at the EU level, we implemented CRR with a major group of exemptions that were also a very hot topic at the time and were still very hot these days. The idea was at the time, at the Basel level, that there was no homogeneous accounting framework. So they decided to introduce a CVA formula and a CVA charge based on that formula that would deviate from the accounting standards. So that was the origin of this formula. After that, CR got implemented, and it was decided through Article 456 that the EBA would do a report to analyze whether this formula, the calculation of capital frameworks, were the good way of doing things and whether we should reconsider this. So this is what we have tried to do in the CVA report, basically. We have also been very much criticized in Europe due to the exemptions through the RCAP assessment that has been done by Basel, which was published on the 5th of December, if I remember correctly, and we were judged non-compliant, so that has been a major issue for us. Our objectives were therefore, well, to reanalyze and reassess the CVA framework, but also to verify whether there was some legitimate reasons why we were deviating from the Basel framework. So this is what we tried to achieve. Just a quick recap. So the CVA report basically was based on a data collection that the EBA conducted through May to July 2014. 32 institutions participated from 11 jurisdictions. There was 14 banks that were using the advanced approach and 18 using the standardized approach, so we got a pretty homogeneous view on the different types of computations of the CVA charge. I tried to emphasize two aspects of the conclusions of this report here. Basically, the first one is the comparison between the regulatory and the accounting framework, because this is clearly one of the key issues we have been trying to assess, and which we will see will be one of the policy recommendations to come. So what we observed is that the main deviations are due to the exemptions, which is no big surprise because basically all the exempted counterparties from CR happen to be mostly in the accounting CVA. So that was something very important we assessed. We also observed that SFTs are not computed in a homogeneous way, so that was another problem. And in terms of impact of exemptions, which is clearly, I think, the key issue of this report, but no worries, I will explain further what the EBA thinks about this. We assessed from what was given by the 32 banks that it would increase by 4 times the RWAs of CVA if ever we put the exemptions back in the framework. So this is just a broad number that was pretty much given from the panel we had. I think this is mainly what you need to remember from this report. Policy recommendations, which interest us most right now. There are basically 3 types of recommendations. Let's say the short-term ones on the scope, basically to clarify how CR is supposed to be interpreted and why there are some issues. I'll give a few examples. I won't go through all of them because there are 16 in total. The second group of policy recommendations, also for clarification. And the last one is, I guess, the most important one because it's the one on the future of CVA through Basel. Because what we have to remember in the end is that all major changes will go through Basel, and this is what we're going to support, even though we at the EBA level have a specific EU framework. We're going to push towards a level playing field. So on the first, let's say, group of policy recommendations, I would like to talk to you about the most important one, which will affect us, let's say, next year probably, which is recommendation on excessive risk from transactions that are exempted. So this is policy recommendation 4. So the idea here is that we assessed during the report and the data collection that there is a lot of CVA risk that exists for exempted transactions. So this was assessed by calculating a pricing CVA or accounting CVA for those kind of parties, and also by calculating CSO1 for those kind of parties. The EBA thought that the risk was too high and that it was important that we reassessed why we included those transactions. So, for example, one of the main reasons for including non-financial is due to the fact that we don't have any spreads, which this is clearly an issue, but that's why also we wrote an RTS on proxy spreads, as you know, I think. Here the idea was that we have a level 1 text that exempts transactions, so we will not re-put those transactions. The only way to do this, if we really wanted to have the exempted transactions back in, would be to change the law, basically. So this is not the objective at all. What the EBA just says is there is some risk, we have to assess it, and we're going to ask for yearly monitoring of this excessive risk. There's going to be guidance that's going to be written by the Supplemental Market Risk on this to assess the thresholds, basically, which they deem to be important where there is excessive risk. And this will be used for supervisors, when they will do their SREP, so for Pillar 2. So it is not something that will be automatic, it will be something that will be assessed yearly and verified. And this policy recommendation is just until we have a new Basel framework that is more harmonized, better calibrated, and where we won't have this issue of exempted transactions that is very specific to Europe. So this is the idea. I want to clarify that it is in no way a means of re-putting all the exempted transactions back into the CVA chart. That is not the objective, just to assess the risk. So this is the most important one. Here I have listed also all the other ones that want to clarify the scope. Mainly problems with how the text is written, basically. But there's a lot of problems about the definitions of the exemptions because it's linked to EMIR, and there are a lot of difficulties. We have written a lot of Q&As to try to clarify the treatment. There have been some questions on the standardized formula. So they're all listed here. I don't think this is mainly the most important aspect to discuss today, but if you have any further questions, we can talk about it. I think what we can look at is mainly this slide, which is the main conclusion from the report and what we as the EBA are telling the Basel Committee to do in their future work. So to give you a bit of a context, there is currently the Fundamental Review of the Trading Book, who's working on this whole review, and we are trying to incorporate the review of the CVA chart within this fundamental review. The idea is we believe that the CVA chart should be a market risk chart. It should be integrated to better capture the different market risks and to better capture also the hedges for CVA, which are not only credit spread hedges. So that was the main, let's say, trigger to push for this review to be included in the Fundamental Review of the Trading Book. What we also, well, the second main conclusion is that there has been more and more homogeneous ways of calculating CVA through accounting due to IFRS. And in the end, the P&L loss of CVA is the accounting CVA. So what we as regulator believe is that, at the EBA, is that we should allow for an accounting framework to be used in the prudential framework. So this is something, again, as I said before, that was not considered at the Basel level because there was too many differences in the ways people and banks computed CVA. Things are changing, so this is something that we recommend with, of course, all the regulatory aspects. That means all the model verification and validation of supervisors. And this will definitely be considered by the Basel Committee. To conclude, let's say there's two ways forward that you have to keep in mind. At the EBA level, we have finished our reports, as I said. We have given our EU recommendations. There will be a yearly monitoring of this excessive risk, and guidance will be clearly published, I think, at the end of the year, normally, for the SREP. this will be done for many banks by, well, of course, the SSM now. We don't know if the Commission is going to do a delegated act or not, so this is in the mandate in CRR. They can, based on what we propose, review CRR and make some changes. It doesn't look like it's going to be what they prefer at this time, but it's unclear, so we're waiting on having their feedback. Another option would be a full legislative process where we would change CRR completely and review everything, but this also should not happen, I think. So this is, again, my perspective from what I understand. It is in no means what the Commission will decide. At the Basel level, so discussions are happening now. We hope to have a consulted document normally this summer, so where your feedback will be, of course, very much waited for. And there should be a QIS also launched during the summer. Normally, with the fundamental review of the trading book being planned for 2018, that's when it should be implemented. So this is pretty much what to expect.
Thanks for that. So it seems a lot more regulations coming our way. But what conclusions can really be drawn from your point of view? It seems counterintuitive to ask you this question, but should you favor more regulation or let the market act freely? On one side, we see that CBA desk appeared in the early 2000s. This subject has been tackled from a regulator's point of view not that early. On the other hand, we see BCBS has launched a project on the FBA, the consultation. So we see more regulations on the FBAs. However, maybe the market can be its own judge. What do you think? What are your conclusions?
I think we have, as a regulator and supervisor, we have a clear motive to go beyond what is done in accounting. That is, I mean, this is the object of pre-evaluation, for example, also. This is why also there has been a CBA charge. I wouldn't say we go towards more regulation. I would say we're trying to take into account the new changes in the market, the way, well, accounting CBA is being done now, how pricing CBA works. So we're looking more at what is done on the market, but keeping in mind that we want to keep the level of regulation that currently exists. So
better regulation, not more.
I hope so. I hope so.
Any questions on the assistants? You have a mic? One? Raise your hand. No one, really? That's that's a question.
So in terms of the next version of Basel, what's the projection? What's the
So, well, one thing is sure is that we're going to incorporate CVA in the market risk framework, so there will be no more stress VAR and VAR, for example. There will certainly be an expected shortfall. That's one thing I can tell you. I think the Basel Committee is really looking into taking into account accounting formulas for the CVA and going beyond using a regulatory formula. So this is something that possibly will be in consultation. We should have some kind of alignment to follow. So the FRTB is proposing advanced approaches and the SBA, which will be the new standardized approach for market risk. So there is some consideration of how using this SBA for the CVA framework. That's another thing that we're looking into. And I think that those would be the main aspects. And well, something very important, which is one of the main problems, is the eligible hedges. So definitely more market risk eligible hedges. And there will be a consultation.
Hello, I want to talk about the exemptions you talked about. I understand that you're saying at first we are going to assess the risk on the exempted transactions, and then maybe I was wondering when do you think we could eventually expect a new law that would change the way we exempt transactions today?
my understanding is that basically this guidance that we're going to do at the EBA level is going to be temporary. It's going to be for the moment, well, it's going to be from now until 2018 where we have a new Basel review. Once we have this new Basel review, the exemptions will be reviewed and probably removed. There's a good chance of that.
Developing HSBC. So a lot has been done on CVA and not that much on funding valuation adjustment. So 2 weeks ago there were some news in the press that both in the US and on the BIS side there was some consideration to look more in depth to funding valuation adjustment. Is there any information that you can share at this point in time?
So, well, two things. I'm not working on the FVA part. It's more on the accounting side that they're working on it at the ECPR. However, we are following the topic. So as you know, the market practices on FVA are very complex these days. I know the US are pushing a lot for having something more homogeneous at the Basel level for good reasons, I imagine. And I think it's really just the beginning for the moment on FVA. There's not much I can tell you at this point. It's not the hot, let's say it's not the hot topic of the moment. We're still focusing on CVA, DBA.
Well, thanks. If there's no more questions, we'll switch to just one more.
One last question. You're talking about, I guess you draw your conclusion mostly from the CVA data collection exercise that was performed last year. And one of the issues I guess every participant had was that we're comparing regulatory CVA, which is drawn by Basel, and the accounting one, which is drawn from accounting standards. How do you intend to merge these two visions, because we have two bodies actually running their own formulas? How exactly do you intend to work, make these two entities work together to provide a unified?
Do you mean for the guidance, for the EBA guidance on excessive risk, or?
I understand that you said we want to incorporate accounting standards back in the regulatory framework. How exactly are you going to?
Okay, that's
work?
Let's say pending to what the Basel Committee is going to want to do. The idea, well, what we are proposing is to allow for the formula that is used for accounting. So basically, we would review each individual formula of the CVA as supervisors. There wouldn't be a fixed formula anymore. That would be the idea, with certain constraints probably on, for example, MPR or certain things like that.
Thanks. So we move on to the next panel, XVA pricing holding. So I invite the panelists to join us.
Thanks, Halder.